Hey everyone, I'm back to talk to you about why you shouldn't buy bootlegs. So what exactly is a bootleg? We usually refer to counterfeit items of an existing product. So you might have this Hatsune Miku Nendoroid, and then there is the bootleg copy. Now the bootleg copy doesn't go through the official channels to be made. The bootleg copy is made by other factories. The bootleg copy is a stolen good. Making a figure is an arduous process. First, you have to get the license. Then once you have the license, then you have to decide on a pose. Once the pose is decided, then you have to make it. Then you have to go through various approvals to make sure that the pose is exactly what you wanted and anticipated. Then it goes to the factory. The factory has to make it. They also have to fit those specifications. It goes to pre-order. It goes out to the public. It's a long process, and many people are involved. There are plenty of reasons why you shouldn't buy a counterfeit figure. One of the biggest reasons is your money's going to criminals, thieves who are stealing from the original creators, the people who made the characters that you love so much. None of those people are actually getting any of your hard-earned money. You're giving your money to criminals. Today, I want to share with you a kind of graphic story I learned while working at Good Smile Company about how they are truly criminals working in the counterfeit goods industry. So this story was told to me on one of my first days over at Good Smile Company, and I was completely in shock. It was told to me directly by Aki-san, the president of Good Smile Company, and the story, it might shock you. Just as a heads up, the story might get a little graphic. So the way the story was told to me, within the factory, there are various positions of people who work within making your figure, from the people who paint them to the people who run the molds to the people who package them. Well, one of the positions in the factory was mold operator. These molds are very valuable. They're the backbone of making the figure. One of the ways that bootlegs were being made is that people would go in and coerce the staff to steal the molds from the factory to give them to the bootleggers so they could make a copy of the mold and then turn around and make their own fake versions. And these thefts were becoming quite prevalent within the figure industry. More and more, you were seeing bootlegs that were stolen from the original mold. The factory workers were being paid under the table by these criminals to steal the mold. So Good Smile Company decided, let's find a way to counteract that. If the factory workers, instead of giving the mold to these criminals, reported them to the police, anytime that they got an arrest, Good Smile Company would give them a bonus. It would encourage them to not steal the mold and then report these criminals to the police. Well, that ended up happening. Somebody came to the factory, they offered a whole bunch of money. That staffer instead reported that person to the police and they got arrested. Turns out that person was part of the Chinese mob. This guy had been wanted by the police for quite some time. Turns out that guy had a huge rap sheet and was very much wanted by the police. After all of the court cases, everything that they'd had on him, he ended up being executed. Well, turns out the Chinese mob wasn't too happy about that. So what did they do? They put a hit out on Aki-san. They were so pissed. They put the blame of the death of that guy squarely on his shoulders. It turned into a huge issue for Aki-san. He couldn't go to China. He couldn't visit the factories. Every time that he did, he'd have to go into disguise. Otherwise, he knew that his life was on the line. Well, the bad luck for one of the mold operators, he happened to look a lot like Aki-san. One night, while he's leaving the factory, late at night, a car pulls around the corner and a whole bunch of guys jump out of the car and they attack him. They attack him with swords and they attack him with knives. They stab him, they cut him. His arm was literally off and they left him for dead, bleeding on the floor. Thankfully, he wasn't the last one to leave the factory. One other person came out, found him, immediately called an ambulance. They were able to take him to the hospital. Thankfully, they saved his life, reattached his arm, and last I heard, he still works for that same factory. Aki-san profusely apologized for the fact that this guy's only crime, he just looked like Aki-san. Point of the story is that these people are downright criminals. These people making these ugly bootlegs that are atrocious already and you don't want in your home, they're criminals. They are stealing from the people who are making these beautiful figures. They're hurting these people. And for what? So you can save $10, $15 on a figure? There's no point. Your money is much more valuable than that. On top of that, these criminals, they think you're dumb. They think that you're not going to recognize the difference between an official product and one of theirs. But you're smarter than that, and we're smarter than that. So don't buy bootlegs. Don't support these criminals. That's it for this week. I'll see you guys next week. Keep on collecting.